House Concurrent Resolution 1001, a concurrent resolution recognizing the week of January 22nd through 28th as Reproductive Rights Awareness Week. Representative Gibson moves that HCR 1001 be adopted.
Representative Gibson's motion having been moved in seconds up for consideration. Are there any remarks?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the body. I bring you House Concurrent Resolution 1001 as a result of a conference I attended this summer in Washington, D.C. regarding women's reproductive rights and justice. Members of the conference nationwide are presenting this resolution during the week of January 22nd and through 28th, 2012 in their respective houses, Senates or state Senates and House of Representatives. Reproductive Rights Awareness Week is to encourage public awareness, conversation, and support for reproductive rights and justice nationwide. Women who plan their pregnancies are more likely to seek prenatal care, which improves the health of the mother and the child. The United States ranks 30th in the world for maternal mortalities and has one of the highest rates of maternal mortality among all developed nations. South Dakota has a problem with infant mortality. Family planning services improve health care outcomes and wellness for women and families. Access to family planning is directly linked to declines in maternal and infant mortality rates. Women who do not receive prenatal care are 3 to 4 times more likely to die after a live birth. Contraception enables women to better prevent unintended pregnancies and also plan for pregnancy when they want to have a child. The United States also has one of the highest unintended pregnancy rates among the world's developed nations. Half of these pregnancies are unintended. Half of those unintended occur in women who are not using contraceptives and poor women. Contraceptives not only help women plan and prepare for pregnancy, but also lower the risk of endometrial and ovarian cancers, ectopic pregnancy, iron deficiency anemia related to heavy menstruation, osteoporosis, ovarian cysts, and pelvic inflammatory disease. Among racial and ethnic groups, there are barriers to access to health care services, including contraceptives and sexuality education. The majority of Americans believe matters related to women's issues, such as the use of contraceptives, are personal issues that should not be decided by women, that should be decided by women with their families, healthcare providers, and or clergy members and their God. I ask you to fully support Reproductive Awareness Week in the state of South Dakota and affirmatively vote for House Concurrent Resolution 1001. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the body.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Torno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question for the sponsor.
Please state your question.
I was wondering from the representative from Huron, why was this concurrent resolution, why is it brought this week, the week of January 22nd?
Representative Gibson, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, and thank you for the question. It was brought this week. It was decided that it would be brought this week as a concurrent resolution from the committee that I attended in Washington, D.C. on reproductive rights and justice, and this was the week that most legislatures in the United States convened. So, therefore, we brought it this week. But thank you for the question.
Representative Torno, you still have the floor. Further remarks? Representative Hansen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and honorable members of the body. I rise today in opposition of this resolution. A little over 50 years ago, the birth control pill was introduced, and in the 60s began a culture of contraception in America. Contraception has since been promoted, defended, encouraged, and funded in our public education, our medical establishment, our social services, which even in South Dakota, according to our own Department of Health website, will provide services to anyone capable of reproduction regardless of age. Contraception is promoted in our media, in our government, in our entertainment, and among our family and friends. Now, by reading this resolution, one would think that contraception is not at all readily available in South Dakota. However, go to any drugstore or Walmart or grocery store or even some public restrooms and you'll find that that is simply just not the case. I think citizens are well aware of contraception in South Dakota, and we don't need 1 week out of the year, which will be half over by the time this were ever passed, to remind us of it. Now, fueling the ideas espoused in this resolution are the old, tired, and frankly immature ideas brought forth from decades ago in the 60s. The idea that sexual activity should be free and liberating and available to all without restriction or without any boundaries. But what is this supposed sexual liberation that contraception promises and this resolution pursues actually gained us? Well, for one, sexual activity outside of marriage has gone through the roof. Ask many young people who have engaged in this practice, and you'll find it often leads to serious emotional and sometimes physical harm. In fact, STD rates have sharply increased alongside the increased usage of birth control. Before the 1960s, about 5 types of STDs existed. Today, with more supposedly protected sex, 30 types of STDs exist. In today's age, more contraceptives are used than ever before, yet in South Dakota, our Department of Health reports all-time record highs in cases of gonorrhea and chlamydia, of which, by the way, the CDC says condom use will only reduce but not eliminate the risk of chlamydia, and birth control will protect against neither. Birth control pill, that is. Now, this resolution would have us believe that if only women were to take one synthetic chemical hormone that's mass-produced by big pharmaceutical companies per day, that their health would be greatly improved. Yet the World Health Organization classifies the birth control pill as a Class 1 carcinogen, which can increase the risk of breast cancer, heart disease, and blood clots. This resolution also encourages more public funding for contraception and claims that that will reduce the number of abortions. But in New York City alone, for example, a city with extensive publicly funded contraceptive programs, especially for the low income, 40%, or 4 out of every 10 mothers have had an abortion. Among the African American community, that number rises to 60%. Again, this is a city with heavy access to publicly funded contraception, as is called for in this resolution. It simply doesn't work. Now, further evidence that increased access to contraception is not working to prevent unintended pregnancies is found on page 2 of this very resolution, where it states, half of unintended pregnancies occur in women who are not using contraceptives. Again, half of unintended pregnancies occur in women who are not using contraceptives. Well, that means the other half of unintended pregnancies occur when women are using contraceptives. That means that contraception, according to this resolution's own statistics, are bearing no seeable results in preventing unintended pregnancies. Now, empirical evidence over the last 50 years shows that many of the findings in this resolution are really unfounded. In fact, a Witherspoon Institute publication by... Thank you, Representatives. A Witherspoon Institute publication by Susan Wills dispels many of these supposed findings. The empirical evidence bears out the fact that with increased access to contraception, unplanned pregnancies and abortions, quoting from Susan Wills, often rise or at best stay the same, end quote. In Spain, according to a study found in the report, between 1997 and 2007, contraceptive use among women rose 63%, while the abortion rate more than doubled. Also from the report, in Sweden between 1975 and 1875, teen abortion rates dropped 40% and teen childbearing also fell. But later, the government increased pregnancy prevention efforts, providing free contraceptive counseling, subsidized oral contraceptives, condoms, and over-the-counter emergency contraceptives. Then, after these policies were put into effect between 1995 and 2001, teen abortion rates in Sweden increased by almost a full one-third. Furthermore, a Duke University economics professor writes, quote, "Our results suggest that increasing access to contraception may actually increase long-run pregnancy rates." The evidence here is in direct contradiction of the supposed facts laid out in this resolution. Ladies and gentlemen of the body, I hope that you have read the last whereas section of this resolution where it indicates that this is a blatantly pro-abortion resolution. It says, quote, "Whereas a majority of American voters believe that matters related to women's reproductive rights, including contraception and abortion, are personal issues that should be left to be decided by women and their families, healthcare providers, and or clergy members." Now this speaks as if we have no interest whatsoever as a state in protecting the life of an unborn child, that it should simply be a personal decision. Well, even in the Roe versus Wade decision, it acknowledged we have some interest as a state in protecting the unborn. So clearly this resolution represents an extreme pro-abortion stance. Now, concurrent resolutions are often tossed about as less than important because they have not the strength of actual law. But these ideas have consequences, and these words have real meaning. A resolution is the legislature's official policy position for South Dakota, and this is a perilous worldview that will not help South Dakota become a better or healthier state. This promotes the identical, fallacious ideas put forth by Planned Parenthood, promoting what they call reproductive rights, the supposed sexual freedom for all, including our young teenage children. A vote for this resolution is a vote for the pro-abortion Planned Parenthood ideology and worldview. Please vote no on this resolution. Thank you, members of the House, Mr. Speaker.
Further remarks? Representative Venner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Feels good to be back. I just wanted to just read a quote from Mark Twain. He was a humorist. 1866 is the date. The quote is, "No man's life, liberty, or property is safe while the legislature is in session." He was a humorist. I don't think we want to give him the title of prophet today. The first one, life. Got to have life before you can have liberty and property. And I guess all I want to say is everybody in this chamber, I believe, started out as a baby in their mother's womb. And abortion is when you take that baby out and kill it. I will resist this resolution.
Further remarks? Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Esteemed members of the House of Representatives, I would like to join you in celebrating the reproductive rights of Americans. We live in the greatest country in the world. I've been all across the world and I've seen that people don't have it as good as we have. Here we're able to have children and raise them in a wonderful environment. And that's something we should celebrate and commemorate. But we're commemorating abortions. In the same bill when we're talking about reproduction, abortion is the antithesis of reproduction. Now, the Honorable Lady from Huron mentioned justice. We often banter about terms and the use of those terms. And I ask you to consider the term justice. The maintenance or administration of what is just, especially by the impartial adjustment of conflicting claims or the assignment of mental rewards, merited rewards or punishments. I celebrate today and I commemorate that my daughter and my son-in-law reproduced. I've got a beautiful 2.5-year-old grandson named Parker. That's something to commemorate. Every one of my children, my grandson, were a gift from God. And I celebrate that. I celebrate that they were born Americans and they are blessed with the liberties that were hard won for them. And I'm disappointed that in a day like this where we could celebrate reproduction, where we could celebrate the liberties that we live under, instead we have a bill where we should all be concerned, or whatever side of the issue you're on, it's not something to commemorate. Abortion is a tragedy. It is a failure of human existence. And it's not something to commemorate. Now, if the Honorable Lady from Huron cares to amend this and strike some of that horrific language, I'd be willing to support some of this. But I cannot celebrate nor can I commemorate the failures of our society when it comes to abortion. I'd ask you to resist that if it's not amended, and I'd ask you to kill this bill if it's not amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Hubble.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also am against the last whereas in this resolution. This resolution may have more of an effect on South Dakota than most resolutions do because of the provisions in PPACA combined with our new state laws. Because of these new laws, federal and state programs are now mandated to be included in our managed care contracts if they are declared by Health and Human Services Secretary or by our State Director of Insurance. Our State Director simply has to tell the health carriers what programs they must include. I don't want this resolution adding to our South Dakota voice that we want to further abortion or emergency contraception in our state. One federal program declared just this past July notified state exchanges that emergency contraception, or the morning after pill, is now required on their list of benefits, even though some formularies of this pill can abort a fetus up to several weeks after. Last Friday, we again heard from another federal program that abortion was to be included in every state exchange. As soon as we establish a state exchange, that provision may be law in South Dakota. On the state side, I want to thank our governor for being solidly pro-life and for not seeking to implement an exchange this year. This resolution seeks to thwart the majority sentiment of South Dakotans and the sentiment of our governor. It would, in essence, establish a pronouncement that we indeed want emergency contraception and abortion in our state healthcare system. I feel this would be a stain on our state to have this resolution on our record books for all of history to see and judge us by. South Dakota has a long and blessed history of people being ruled by God. In fact, our state motto, "Under God the people rule," indicates that we are conduits for the heart of God to flow through us as we legislate for the people of South Dakota. The heart of God. Let's imagine what the heart of God feels like in regards to this resolution. The creator of life gives us a precious gift in the form of a very small child. It's a gift that takes 9 months to prepare ourselves for the magnitude of it. It's a gift that will change our lives. And some people respond to that and choose to reject that with emergency contraception or abortion. Imagine the heart of God. He hears the screams, sees the writhing and pain, and feels the terror as these little ones are torn apart or poisoned. We don't hear, feel, or see the tiny baby situation unless we get close to the heart of God. South Dakota, indeed America, cannot ask for the blessing and covering of the Almighty. We cannot ask that He bless our fields and our businesses. We cannot ask that He favor our children and things we cherish if we continue to throw our smallest and most vulnerable children back in His face, bruised, bloodied, and torn apart by abortion. People, this grieves the heart of God. God is patient. God is kind, and God is forgiving. But His patience doesn't last forever. The cries of these precious little ones will soon reach a crescendo that even God's huge, forgiving heart cannot bear any longer. There comes a point of judgment and vindication for all the pain so many children have had to bear. That I rue the day when we will have stuck our finger in God's eyes one too many times. At some point of judgment, we may find ourselves crying out to God and praying, "Oh, God, help us." If you were God and finally grieved to the point of action, how would you answer? If you had to clean up the mess of abortion and comfort those tiny souls, would you show mercy and answer the prayers of those who let them die? or of those who pretended it was just a reproductive right? God says, today I set before you life and death, blessings and curses. I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you will make. Oh, that you would choose life and that you and your children may live. That's Deuteronomy 30 of his word. I ask you to vote against this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Blake, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to refute a few things that have been said, I think we're all interested in doing what the right thing is. Make no mistake. And I will always speak on behalf of women's rights. When we talk about sexual activity going through the roof, I don't think that's new. I think that's always been going on. And if parents would be talking to their kids, maybe we wouldn't have so much of that. Where is that? If we really want to get at the heart of this, then let's do what we need to do to stop unintended pregnancies, which is good sexual education, a comprehensive sex education curriculum that starts in kindergarten, teaching kids about how special they are and how special their bodies are, how to make friends, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. We won't allow that. Fact is, condoms save lives. Period. Girls that get diseases end up not being able to reproduce. Contraceptives save lives. These things are important when we think about doing this. We all want to do the right thing, but then let's go after what the real problem is. 1 out of 2 babies being born now in South Dakota is on Medicaid. And then we cry and scream about having to support women on Medicaid. Doesn't make sense. We need to support the things that stop those unintended pregnancies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Kopp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This resolution is nothing more than a guised abortion in the process. Basically, it's a guise to commemorate abortions. Now, if I were to ask the members of this House if they would stand with me and commemorate a great day such as December 7th, 1941, I wonder how many would stand and commemorate with me. Or how about if I asked the members of this esteemed body to stand and commemorate 9/11 with me? But yet those two combined only amount to several thousand innocent people being murdered. Since Roe versus Wade, we can count over 41 million unborn children that have been murdered in the name of freedom. I would ask you to vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further remarks? Would any member like to speak before Representative Gibson speaks a second time? Hearing none, Representative Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the body. I think what we're forgetting in this conversation is how the people of South Dakota voted. In 2006, in the general election, 334,593 South Dakotans cast a ballot on Referred Law 6, rejecting the abortion ban in South Dakota. Over 50% of voters in 43 out of 66 counties in South Dakota rejected the abortion ban. We are representatives of the people of the state of South Dakota. You are not voting with your constituents. In 2008, in the general election, 374,095 South Dakotans cast a ballot on initiated measure 11. Of those, 51.21% voted no, 44.79 voted yes. Over 50% of the voters in 45 out of 66 counties in South Dakota rejected the ban on abortion. Overall, the number of people who voted against the abortion ban increased by 20,590 from 2006 to 2008. In my district, I'm representing the majority of the people who support this House concurrent resolution and support reproductive rights and justice. That's why I'm bringing it before you. Right now, the state of South Dakota is litigating millions of dollars in unconstitutional laws against the rights of women. That's how we're spending our money in South Dakota right now. I object to that. That's why I'm bringing this resolution. I would certainly like you to listen to what your constituents have said in 2006 and 2008 and vote with your constituents on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the body.
Thank you, Representative. Further remarks?
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Cronin.
to call the previous question.
All those in favor of the motion to call the previous question signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Question before the House is final consideration of Representative Gibson's motion that HCR 1001 be adopted. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine. Members shall proceed to vote. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, sir. Personal privilege.
Granted, sir.
I'd like to call to the body's attention the presence of a former representative and senator of the South Dakota legislature, Mr. Lee Schoenbeck, in the gallery. I'd like to thank him for his service and welcome here today, sir.
Senator Schoenbeck, welcome back. It would be a warmer welcome if you were a former House member.
Mr. Speaker, all members present have voted.
Clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were yeas 12, nays 53.
Gibson motion having failed to receive majority vote of the members elect hereby declared lost.